I am very excited to be here with Joni Sussman, or Joanna Sussman, from Kar-Ben Publishing. That's Kar-Ben. And Kar-Ben is an imprint of Lerna Publishing, which is a pretty large publishing house. And they are celebrating their 40th anniversary next year, which is pretty great. Kar-Ben is what's known as a niche publisher, and they publish Jewish-themed children's books, primarily picture books. You don't have to be Jewish to write them, but you do need to know about Jewish culture, which is fun to research. And the same with illustrating. And their books are gorgeous. They do a really, really fantastic job. They have lots of beautiful books. And we can thank Joni for a lot of that. And Joni's been kind enough to consent to be with us today and share her experience, strength, and hope around being a publisher and what she looks for. Joni, can you speak a little about your path to being a publisher?
Yes, I've always been very interested in children's books. I graduated with a journalism degree, so writing is something that was always of interest to me. And I really made my career first in printing and then moving on into children's book publishing. And I've been in this industry for many, many years. I've been the publisher at Kar-Ben for the last 10 years, and we've grown from a relatively small imprint of maybe 6 to 8 titles a year to about 20 titles a year. So we've really grown the imprint, and we've been very successful in the niche market of Jewish, mostly picture books, but a variety of other books as well.
That's wonderful. So, Joni, when you get a submission, what are the first things that you look for or look at?
I get about 1,000 submissions a year, just to give you a sense of how many manuscripts I've got. And of that, I pick about 20, of which a number of them are actually debut authors. And what I'm looking for is subject matter that's going to be of interest to us, as well as a writing style that's going to work. So it's pretty easy just from reading a few paragraphs or maybe sometimes even a few sentences of a manuscript to decide that the book isn't for us. And the way I determine right away if it isn't for us is A, if the subject matter isn't something that's a good fit for us, or otherwise if the writing isn't very good. Maybe the subject is good, but I can see that the author really just doesn't have a voice. So those can be easily rejected. And then I end up with two other piles. The absolutely, yup, this is great pile, and the this has potential because this combination of subject and writing could be tweaked and developed and worked with enough to make it into a usable manuscript for us.
And that's one of the fantastic things about working with a smaller press or a niche publisher is that often the publisher or the editor, actually rarely do you get to work with the publisher, but in Joni's case, you might, especially pitch contest winners from this course. You might be lucky enough where she goes, yes. And when Joni speaks about voice, she's talking about the kind of language that you're using, the ways that you put sentences together, the ways that you differentiate one character from another in the kind of syntax, and whether, there's someone that kind of stumbles over their words or someone that is just flows eloquently and uses lots of similes or whatever it is to make that voice very distinctive and really appealing to kids. So that's really cool. Joni, I see all these books on your bookshelf. And I have many favorites myself. This one here is one that I love. Where's My Tushy? Where's My Tushy? And a tushy is short for tuchus. And tuchus is a Yiddish word for bottom. And there's very few places that you will find a book that's basically about runaway bottoms. It's hilarious. It's really fun. The illustrations are great, and they really match the tone of the story and the writing. Joni, can you share some other books with us, or
Sure.
any comments
Um,
you have about this particular story?
yes. First of all, that particular one, this Where's My Tushy book is really a pretty hilarious story. And what is it? One of the questions is, what is it about this book that makes it Jewish? And the answer is simply the Yiddish word tushy. So this is a good example of the fact that Carbon isn't looking for religious stories. We don't want stories that tell how do you observe the Jewish holidays, we do this, we do that. It's more that our books are celebrations of Jewish culture in various ways. And in the case of this particular one, it's really the Yiddish word tushy and the funny story about the tushy leaving town and eventually how they get all the tushies to come back. I have several others that are interesting and beautiful. Here's one that's called Rivka Takes a Bow. This one has done very well for us. It was reviewed in the New York Times, which is a huge coup for, especially for a small publisher. And this is a story about the Yiddish theater. And it's based on a true story written by a 92-year-old woman who was a child of the Yiddish theater. Her parents were actors, and she sent me this manuscript, which was really an autobiographical little story about what it was like as a little girl for her to go to the Lower East Side with her parents and be part of the Yiddish theater and observe that. And it's a beautiful story with crossover appeal well outside the Jewish community because it really is about the magic of theater. And the artwork, I paired this story, which is, again, a story about the Yiddish theater, with a Japanese illustrator, Kosei Kawa. And he did the art for this book, and it isn't at all what one would expect for a book about the Yiddish theater. And it's done very well for us. He really brought this sense of magic to the story, and it's a beautiful book. So that's another example.
And let me just interrupt you a second. And one of the things that Joni's brilliant at is taking something that, I mean, this is a hysterical story with a lot of, traditional materials. Some of the writing's fun, but she paired it with a very, very contemporary illustrator. And so that's part of the magic of a lot of Carbon books, is that they've got these great illustrations that show that, historical, contemporary, whatever, it's all relevant for right now, and it's really engaging for young children, which is the target audience for picture books. So, bravo.
Thank you. I could show you a couple of others.
Oh, well, I love it, love it, love it, yes. And I want to see Latka in the background too.
Yes, so this one is called The Whispering Town. Again, an unusual book with a lot of crossover appeal. It's a Holocaust related story, and Holocaust stories for kids are tricky. And this is based on the true story of a Danish fishing village that managed to save its Jewish community. If you know, during the Holocaust, sometimes for the Jews that were in the Scandinavian countries, they could get to the harbor and take ships to safety, let's say in Sweden, which was what the Danes in this town wanted to do. But it was such a bright sky all the time that it was impossible to get the hidden Jews to the harbor. And so they waited until it was a dark, cloudy night, and they basically whispered the Jews from door to door. Everyone went to their front door and whispered this way, and quietly, quietly managed to get the Jews to the harbor and to safety. Beautiful story, a true story, and the afterword, the true story, is included in the book. And here too, I paired a graphic novel style art with this story. Again, this isn't what you would conventionally expect. You would expect really representational period style art, and that wasn't the route that I chose to go with this one. It's been very well reviewed and done very, very well for us. And it also indicates a slightly older audience when you look at the art. The Holocaust is a serious time, and this isn't something for 3-year-olds. So by using this slightly more sophisticated art, we could hint just from the cover itself that this is more for kids who are going to be maybe 7 years old, not little ones. This book has done very well for us.
Oh, can I just jump in a second? And
Sure.
To me, from what I can tell here, it looks like these are F and Gs. Is that correct?
This particular one is an F and G. The ones that I showed you previously are actually printed books.
So, Joni, can you quickly share what an F and G is?
Yes, and we call them F and Gs, but they're also called galleys or proofs. This is what we have to show to our sales reps and to reviewers prior to the book itself being published in the marketplace. So before we actually get bound books, which doesn't happen until later in the process, reviewers and sales reps want to know maybe as early as a year in advance what a certain book is going to look like. And so we make up these essentially unbound galleys. And you can see here, the cover comes off of the book, and this unbound galley is what we use for review purposes, to show as advanced copies at conferences, to show to sales reps. They're also less heavy to carry around than
Yes.
bound copies of the books. Now, truthfully, much of this can be done digitally today, but still many people like to see a printed sample. What is the paper going to feel like? What is the book really going to be like, even though they could certainly see the art on an iPad? So for certain titles, we create these, they're called uncorrected galley proofs, meaning it's so early in the process that these may still change before the final copy.
Yeah, but it's expensive making those changes.
It is. And so we don't do it for every title,
Uh-huh.
but we do it for certain ones that we think are really going to do well, because we want to almost hand sell them to our sales reps and to the reviewers.
And just, a quickie, 32-page picture book will generally be 8 really big sheets of printed paper on both sides that are then folded in such a way to create these F&Gs. So that was really fascinating. And also I think it was a real privilege for people here to be able to see the process of how a book is made, the printing process.
And if at some time you'd like to talk a little bit about the printing process for books, I'd be happy to assemble some press sheets and some proofs and some different things to, show your authors what that process is actually like. Having come out of the printing industry and having owned a printing company myself for 10 years, I'm very familiar with that and would be happy to chat about that sometime if you'd like.
Oh, well, maybe we'll do that for the illustration course, or maybe we'll do that later. And I don't know, like just talking with Joni and getting to know her more, don't you just desperately want to work with her? I mean, she's just beautiful, Joni. Show us more. There's the new one by Barbara Krasner that I don't have in my collection and really want.
When we're done with this, I'm going to put this very one in the mail to you, Mira.
Am I shameless or what?
No, absolutely. I just appreciate the opportunity to get in front of your authors. This is a lovely book called Goldie Takes a Stand. And this is about an episode in the early life of the little girl Golda Meir, who was born in Milwaukee and grows up to become the Prime Minister of the State of Israel. So a great and inspirational story. You can see from the cover that this has really lovely period style art that the reviewers have really liked. And this is a true story about an episode of Golda Meir, age 9, who does her first organizing by getting her friends together to try to raise money to buy textbooks for her friends at school. She comes from a poor community. This is, Depression era. It's tough times. And even as a little girl, Golda Meir was really a pretty special little kid and had public welfare at heart. So it's a charming story. Barbara Krasner, who is a historian, did a lovely job putting the story together. And again, we paired it with art that we thought would work well for this period, and this one is doing really well for us.
Yeah, and so it should. I've read it. It's very feisty.
Yes.
Which is totally appropriate. And Golda Meir is such a fascinating character. I remember one quote that I heard that she said many, many decades ago. But it was they wanted to do a curfew on women in Israel. It was when she was the prime minister, and they wanted to do a curfew because there were all these assaults happening on women. And she said, no, there shouldn't be a curfew on the women. The curfew should be on the men. They're the ones doing the assaults.
She was very feisty, and some of the reviewers did comment on the fact that she's kind of a bossy little girl. And typically girl characters are sweet little lovely bow in the hair characters, and one of the things I loved about this is that Goldie is Goldie. She is herself. She is bossy. She tells her friends what to do, but that's the reality. And I think it's good for a variety of little girls to be able to see themselves in different characters in storybooks.
And so that's another point that I want to bring up too is, as Joni's mentioned, you don't have to be Jewish to write for Carbon. But, you know, you could get a great Jewish subject person to do a biography of. So you could do, oh, there are so many phenomenal Jewish figures. Groucho Marx, you know, he'd be cool for a biography. Adam Levine, I mean, the sexy rock star. That would probably be for an older than picture
Yeah.
books, but
And you know, part of what I'm looking for when it comes to biographies, and I'm talking about now the picture book genre, is I'm really not looking for cradle to grave biographies.
mhm.
What I want is an episode in that character's life that sort of becomes an indication of who they are. We did another really beautiful book about Marcel Marceau, the mime. Many people don't know that he was a Jewish guy from Strasbourg, and the book is about the period of his life during the Holocaust when he worked in the underground and secretly helped get Jewish children in and out of France. Very,
Wow.
very interesting period. And then only in the back is there the full story of his life, and it ends, you know, with the fact that he later became a mime. But it's really about a certain period of his life, not, you know, he was born here and he died here. So we're really looking for these episodic stories, and particularly one if it's from the childhood or young adulthood of someone famous, so that kids can get a better sense of who these guys are and women before they become heroes and major players. So
Mhm.
that's sort of the angle I'm looking for when it comes to writing about, you know, famous Jewish characters of various kinds.
Yeah, I call that the new nonfiction. Not, you
Yeah,
know, not your
it is.
granddad's nonfiction where it was so dry. And books like this, Goldie Takes a Stand, I think the word is juicy. It's
Yes.
really juicy.
Really juicy and a fun read. You'd almost enjoy it just as much, even if you didn't know that Golda Meir became the prime minister. You know, that tells you that it's a good standalone story, and that's really what I'm looking for.
Mm. What else would you like to share with us?
I've got one more here, although certainly I have many hundreds that I would love to show you.
Oh,
But
yeah.
this is an interesting one. This is called Elon, Son of Two Peoples. And this is a picture book, again, a true story, based on a true story about a young boy. He's 12 years old, living in San Francisco in the late 1800s. He has a Jewish father and a Native American mother, actually an Acoma Indian princess. And it's an early story of an intermarried family, really. And this young man has a bar mitzvah in San Francisco, and then the family journeys by train to the Mesa to go through a Native American coming of age ceremony. So it is a really beautiful story. It's been very well reviewed. And it's a multicultural story in a time where that's really big in the marketplace. So I love the story right away. It's by Heidi Smith Hyde, who has done a number of American Jewish history stories for us. And this one, too, has done very nicely.
Don, can I hit on you for one last one? And that's Lutka, the lucky dog.
Sure.
It just, I'm seeing it right behind you. And
Yes.
how could I resist with a name like that? And look at the
Yes.
alliteration.
So, you know,
Can
this
I
is
just jump
something.
in one sec? I just
Yeah,
want
sure,
to
go
point
ahead.
out how great that language is. Lutka, the lucky dog. So we've got the L's and the K's. And just how pleasurable it is to say. And that's voice. It's how you put your words together and how great you can make them sound on your tongue and coming out your mouth. Joni, tell us more.
Well, and the other thing about this title, and you've actually got right on the point here, Mira. Latka the Lucky Dog signals to our readers right away that this is a Hanukkah story. So it doesn't have to say Latka the Lucky Dog, a Hanukkah tale, because we want to telegraph Hanukkah right in the title of the book, because Hanukkah books are big sellers for us. So by using the name Latka right in the title, that's telling people right away what holiday it's for, and that's a big plus. So Hanukkah books tend to do well, but there are so many of them out there, and there's a lot of really boring ones. This one was adorable and stood out because it's a Hanukkah story told in the voice of the dog. So Latka the dog is telling the story about how he's a puppy that comes to live with this family, and he's so eager to become part of the family, but he does everything wrong. He jumps and he knocks over the Hanukkah candles, and he eats the fried latkes, and he melts the chocolate, and he just does all kinds of problematic things, and he's very worried that the family may not love him, but of course they love him very much, and he ends up staying with them throughout the celebration, and of course continues on as their pet. And it's a really cute voice because you see this anxious little puppy talking in his puppy voice, trying to convey what he's thinking in his puppy head. So I think this one's going to just do great for us. And we actually like this book so much that we used the art as the cover of our carbon catalog for fall 2014. So sometimes when I've got something that is just really great, it's this art is so cute, this puppy you just want to hug.
Yes.
And this was an example of really the art helping to make the book. It was an adorable story, but when I saw this puppy character, and when we worked with the artist, her name is Tiffany Beek. She's British, and we asked her to do a couple of sort of character studies for us on what this dog might look like. And she did a few of them, and as soon as we saw this one, it's like, this is Latka. And that's what it turned out to be.
Could you read a couple of pages from that?
Sure. I am one lucky dog. Imagine a mutt like me picked as a Hanukkah present. And by the way, every time the dog is talking, it's in a different color of type than when the humans are talking. So that kind of helps the kids. They could even read it as a play or something like that, being the dog and being the humans. It happened one day in December when a family walked into the shelter. A mom, a dad, and 2 kids, Zoe and Zach. Zach said, I want a big dog. Uh-oh, I thought, I'm not big. But Zoe said, I want a little dog that will fit in my doll stroller. I tried to curl up as small as possible, but I'm not little. Then Mom said, let's compromise and look for a medium-sized dog. Yep, that's me. I danced around and wagged my tail, and finally they noticed me. So this is the beginning of how they choose the dog, and they select him to come home. And the art is just so adorable and kid-friendly. I don't know how much of it you can see, how well, but it's really an adorable book. And you can see here, the family, the dog comes home and is with the family, and here he is eating the food off the kitchen counter.
Naughty
and
Latka.
Also, what?
Naughty Latka.
He's a naughty little dog, and he does all kinds of bad things. Here he is eating up the Hanukkah candles that he finds on the floor. So it's a very sweet story, and the puppy causes all kinds of trouble. And little kids cause a lot of trouble themselves. So when they see this funny little dog doing things that they might even do themselves, I think that really helps us on the selling side too. So we anticipate this one to be a really popular one for this Hanukkah.
Yeah, and it's got good curriculum connections as well for literacy and things like, a big dog, a little dog, a medium-sized dog. Well, that's all totally age-appropriate learning concepts for the age that kids will be reading this. That was
Correct.
very inarticulately put, wasn't it? But you know what I'm saying.
Yes, and in fact, I'm glad that you brought that up, Mira, because Learner, our parent company, is mostly a school and library publishing house, and we do a lot of study guides and parent companions that go with our books, and they're available free on our website.
Wow.
So parents and teachers, we haven't done one yet for Latka, but parents and teachers who want some additional materials to use with their kids or in their classrooms, we have that available for a lot of our books.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a huge, and homeschooling parents.
Yes,
there's a lot of
absolutely.
homeschooling parents.
Yep.
So, Joni, I hope a bunch of our students end up publishing with you. We're going to really push them to get that voice the best it can. We have a little section on research in the course, and and another thing that's a phenomenal resource is to go to the library and work with a children's librarian or a regular librarian and say, I'm looking for fascinating Jewish characters, or I'm looking for things about Hanukkah, and see what else is already out there. Do your research. Find some fabulous topics that haven't been explored before. I mean, Marcel Marceau, that great Golda Meir. There are Jewish people are characters. And focus on that one pivotal incident, that thing that really helped make them who they are. And so there's just different ways of approaching things. But I really like your approach where you're looking at childhood incidents. Joni, this has been a total honor and a treat. I I'm just thrilled to have connected with Joni, and I hope that she will end up being a wonderful resource for all of you, and that you can also help get the word out about Carbon Publishing and the fabulous books that they do. And we'll be including the URL so people can find you easily. So, Joni, thank you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate your having me, and I look forward to seeing manuscripts someday from some of your students.
Me too. Okay, bye, love.
Bye.